What is the difference between what we are and what we can be? This lecture is about logic, wisdom, and the abilities and situations that we don't know yet. When we as human beings, we try to study psychology, we try to study the way the man behaves, reacts, concludes, feels. If we take all these things that I've described and think about a situation that he hasn't seen yet. Now we want to focus something that we don't know. If we draw a line between what we know about, let's say, a particular human being, he knows some things. When he will meet something he never met, he will behave in a way that we don't know. We can compare it to physics as if there is matter and antimatter, but it won't be true. It's a matter and a different situation of a matter. It's not like the future is a dark and the past is the bright. What we know, what we already experienced, what we already understand is one side, and what we haven't experienced, situations we haven't experienced and people who haven't experienced. That's where logic and wisdom are going to appear in this lecture. I will give you an example. Imagine that we, as humanity, somewhere in the past, we find a bomb in the sand. Now we as humanity, we don't know what is a bomb. We are in a situation, let's say somewhere in the past, we don't know what is the metal, what is the paint on it, what is the writing on it, we don't know. So we take it, we bring it to our city, we show it to the people, we ask them what do they think it is. We have a lot of theories, we bring it to the laboratory, we try to cut it open, it explodes. Now what we know as humanity, that this X thing looks like that. We have a lot of explanation about what it is, but if we crack it open, it explodes. That's our experience. But among the people, there will be few people who will understand what is the original purpose of this device. Now we try to understand how they understand it. How come some people can understand something that they haven't met? How some investigators figure out the situation even though they don't have all the information they need. And still they can point out a place where there will be the lost evidence that will complete their theory. I'll give you an example of wisdom. When you go and read books about police investigators and how they find the criminal, many times in his book you see there is one investigator and there's someone that he's talking to, and it seems that the investigator has got some knowledge coming from somewhere that tells him where to look and what kind of evidence they're looking for. This is what we're going to look at. Wisdom and logic. In this lecture, when we talk about wisdom and logic, we assume that the existence has got patterns that repeat, like in music. And people who are wise, or at least someone who's got a wise moment, it doesn't have to be necessarily a particular person, it can be a particular moment in a person's life. He figures out from the pattern what is happening. And he figures it out inside his memory. Somehow he compares it to some other patterns that he knows, and he already knows the next step. So this is what we call logic and wisdom. And many times when we tell each other a story, we expect the other side to understand the story, although we tell him very few moments along the story. I'll give you another example. Imagine that you hear a story. A friend of yours comes to your house and he tells him that his friend just got divorced. If you're a grown-up man, you already have patterns in your mind about divorcing and the reason for divorcing. You already have imagination flowing in the air of your imagination, looking for the next step. And then you're going to ask him, oh, really? He divorced? When? Why? What happened? And you will start inside your memory to organize what you know and to compare it to what you know. But you already have in your mind some answer to the question that you already asked. This process that we have memory and we compare the events to the memory again and again and again in order to see reality better, is where we find logic and wisdom. Now, if we go inside our memory and try to figure out, maybe we know something we never experienced. Maybe our memory carries something with it that we call wisdom. And I will confront this idea and saying that we have ability to understand patterns. We have ability to remember patterns. Even I will exceed and say that what we do remember are the patterns and not the events themselves. We need more than one event to organize our memory. Every event needs at least few attachment points. The smell, the time, the name, the language, the color, the feeling. That's how we organize our memory. And it seems that young people organize their memory out of the blue. They can make connection between milk and time because they are being served milk glass in the morning. But it's not the correct logic. And it is the correct logic at the same time. So they put it in their memory in the way they felt it, and they have patterns. And they fix those patterns every day by the experience. And the more experience they have, different experience, not of the same pattern, different experience, the more ability to have logic and wisdom and to figure out the answer even before they have all the information. Before I finish, I will say that we are always, as humanity, looking for wisdom, and we're looking for ability to forecast the future. That's where we have a problem, because we start to make organized social patterns. It's not only in the memory of the human being, it's in the memory of the society. We start to remember that the moon is rising every night with a different shape, or at least a different look, and we know that it's a pattern. Every 28 days it will repeat itself. Now when a teacher comes to a child and tells him this pattern, we can assume it is some kind of humanity or society's memory. It's a memory. But at the same time, when you go to figure out the situation, and you know that when the moon is shining, there is more activity because you already investigated the situation, you already know if a party that's going to kick off at a shining moon night, how would you call it, full moon night, will be a happier party, more energized party. We already know this pattern. We already know this pattern, but we know it as a society. We know we have a calendar that already understands the pattern. And calendar is a very good example because it's very accurate. But we have a lot of patterns that are not accurate. Not only they are not accurate, we did it on purpose to hold some information, and sometimes we bluff to our next generation because it's hard to explain the whole theory. So we shorten it, we make a small story, and we give it to the next generation. And when the next generation reaches the university, they will have to learn the real pattern. Not the small story about democracy, for example. The democracy is when people vote. No, it's a much broader story. But if you want to make it short, you want to tell society about the patterns, the written patterns in the memory of the society, you supply them with the memory of society. Now, does society as a whole has logic and wisdom? We can assume that you cannot say that the whole society will have the ability to forecast the future by patterns, of course. It's not from heaven, it's from understanding patterns. But it is based on the people who are holding the information, the people who have read the memory, the social memory, and they will also have an inner understanding, very strong understanding of the existence pattern, and they will have the ability to find the evidence and to be known as wise. And us as society, we can see ourselves as wise because we made another step from one set of patterns that we know and a little bit different set of patterns because we figure out that it's a little bit different every time and every time. I hope you enjoyed this lecture about logic, wisdom, and patterns. And it's been a lovely morning sitting with myself and the camera.